It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality Live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.
Saludos a todos and welcome back to another episode of this amazing show called The Non-Prophets, the show where we discuss news and topics of the day from a skeptical, humanistic perspective. My name is Theo el Ateo, and maybe you don't remember or you don't know, but exactly 1 year ago, I was a nervous wreck right in here, joining the panel for the first time ever. And in order to celebrate that, they have allowed this cute cartoon to conduct the show today. Is this the worst mistake the ACA has ever made? Well, to find out, I have with me an amazing cast that is going to help me discover that. Located on the other extreme of the screen, I have the always great and nice Kelley Laughlin, whose knowledge on rocks leaves me petrified. Sorry, Kelley.
Thanks.
How are
Thanks,
you today,
happy
sir?
to be here.
Amazing. And next to him, I have the only and amazing Bible sage, Maestro de Maestros, Mr. Richard Gilliver. Hi, Richard.
Hello, I'm so excited tonight. This cast is amazing. I say this every week, but I'm actually part of it this week. So I love working with Scott, Kelley, Teo. Obviously, we've been friends for a long time. This is going to be a good one.
I totally agree with you. And finally, right next to me, a nice fellow who was with me on my third time in here. And he is today's returning guest, the numbers guy, Scott Dickie. How are you, sir?
Thank you, Teo. I'm doing great. I feel very comfortable nestled between these great minds, and so I'm looking forward to tonight.
Amazing, me too, and this is going to be great. So, everybody, let me remind you, this is a show product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 non-profit organization dedicated to the separation of religion and government and promoting positive atheism. And today we have several interesting topics. First, we will be talking about legal claims that are going to tell us how certain judge from the USA Supreme Court is tied to a certain misogynist group. That's going to be very interesting. In the second part, we will be talking about why an atheist would always carry a Bible with her. That's also going to be interesting. And in segment 3, sadly, we're going to be talking about another leader who has abused children. And we will see why they thought that he was basically God on earth and how that gave him so much power. And the fourth segment is a special one for Father's Day, because we will talk about how to come out as an atheist without destroying your relationships with your family. So, as always, as in all our shows, as I was saying, the links to today's topics and the news that we're going to discuss will be available in the description below. And a reminder that if you want to come to the show prepared, you can check out the Nonprofits Facebook fan page every Friday night for a list of the articles ahead of time, so you're ready for what we're going to be talking about today. And with that, we're going to move into the first segment. Mr. Kelley, if I'm not mistaken, you are the one who is going to tell us about this.
Yeah, looks like you're gonna start out with me. You made that mistake again.
This is not a mistake, sir.
Yeah, this is an article that came from The Guardian. It was written by Stephanie Kirschgesner, and I'm hoping I didn't butcher her last name, but there's a really good chance I did. And it's about a group called the People of Praise that Amy Comey Barrett used to belong to. And she had lived with a couple of the Rannigans, Kevin and his wife Dorothy Rannigan, when she was a law student going to Notre Dame. Now, the Rannigans have had many accusations leveled against them about their behavior. In '93, Cynthia Carnick tried to get a a court order to not allow her husband to bring their children to the household where Amy Barrett was living at. There is nothing that ties Barrett to the house at this time. She may or may not have been there, but Miss Carnick mentions a lot of inappropriate incidents involving the Ranigans and the Ranigan children, and she wasn't comfortable with her children being there, so she got a court order against them. There's a lot of really weird sexually explicit behavior, but it doesn't seem like they were accused of molesting their children, but there was, like I said, there was like accusations of them dry humping in front of the children. There was an accusation that the father was still showering with his 10 and 11-year-old daughters, which as a dad I find really creepy. But the piece kind of seems like it seems like a hit piece to me, trying to connect Amy Comey Barrett to this group, which she was connected to it, but I don't think she had any say in the workings of this group. And it's sort of like this piece is kind of like trying to draw that line between them, and I'm not so sure that was such a great thing to do. It kind of left me with a bad taste in my mouth. So Richard, what do you think? You want to take it from there?
Yeah, I got the same impression about it being a hit piece. That's the first thing I noticed about it. Amy Coney Barrett is not the greatest of people when it comes to political views. I think is from my perspective, I think is a reasonable thing to say, but to kind of tie her to this organization. And she has got ties to this organization, but to kind of her name's mentioned over and over and over again in this article, and she really has nothing to do with these allegations. And at the moment, they are just allegations. They're as terrible as they are. There's been nothing proven in court about them. There's it's ongoing. Both the family and the organization deny that these things occurred. There was if I remember rightly, there was an agreement settled regarding something to do with the allegations from the article. Tells us from the time when they first came up, but there's no details regarding that, and it's all very vague.
Oh, sorry, Richard. I think that they only mention her because they want to make sure that, in case that they are taking to justice, you don't have this person, Amy Coney Barrett, who is a member of the of this church, judging them because there could be some fishy things going on. At least I felt that was the idea, because as you mentioned, there is no indication that she lived in the house when the thing with the children happened, or that she even witnessed anything. It's just mentioning, oh, we have this terrible group that tell women how to dress, what to do, how to spend their money, who to date. And this person who is a Supreme Court justice, she's part of that. She has these extremist ideas. Actually, the article mentions that she was in charge of a school, and that school started banning children that had same-sex parents, and gay or lesbian teachers were not allowed in there when and it started with her. So I guess I don't want to defend anything, but I guess the idea was that, like, this person has this extreme point of views. They come from this awful institution that we know has a fishy background. So be careful. I don't know, Scott. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm glad the other panelists agree with me with my assessment that this reeks of clickbaitiness, right? It seems like it's a setup, and I think that's encouraging to me. I think that if we want to be real skeptics, we need to make sure that we apply our skepticism to headlines and ideas that coincide with our beliefs. And so I might be naturally opposed to things related to Amy Coney Barrett and to this religious organization, but we need to make sure that we don't rush to judgment as well. And so I think that we really had two stories here. They spent, part of the story talking about this family and this religious organization, these people of praise, and there's some goings on there. There's some questionable activity going on, as Richard pointed out, that they really didn't. They didn't mention anything about any criminal charges, and they were kind of vague about what happened. They mentioned that there was some kind of settlement between the organization and the alleged victims. To me, that sounds like, okay, they had a settlement, and then there was some kind of clause in the settlement that they don't, some kind of gag rule or something like that. So that was one of the stories, and that was. There's a lot of impact with stories like that. You see people not only taking advantage of children, which is bad enough, and taking advantage of vulnerable adults. They talked about how the organization could be manipulative of some of their members, dictating who they could even date, and they would have to hand over their paychecks, and they can dictate how they spend their paychecks, and so yes, we have a cult-like organization that, if not, I don't know where we would draw the line to call it a cult, but we have this organization that are doing these things, and then they slap Amy Coney Barrett's picture on the front of it and put a big headlines that's supposedly connecting her to the organization. She wasn't. In fact, they specifically said in the article that they were not able to find anything connecting Amy Coney Barrett to any of the alleged misbehaviors or inappropriate behaviors, but she was connected to the organization, and the impression that I got, and I was taking it with a kind of a rather large grain of salt, but the impression that I got is they were saying, look, there's this organization that doesn't treat people, that doesn't respect people's rights. They didn't say that they specifically did this manipulation on only women, although in the article, the only victims that they mentioned in this respect were women, and so I don't know if they treated men the same way. I don't know if the organization was unusually restrictive on women, but I think these are such important things to talk about. How these are. When people get involved in religious organizations like this, they trust the leaders and they trust the organization itself to take care of them and to at least be respectful of them. And so it's a betrayal of another order of not just these are people that bill themselves as people that can be trusted, people that have have their ear to God, right? They're listening to what the Almighty Creator is telling us about the world. And so when there are these failures, it just hurts all the more. Now, is Amy Coney Barrett tied to the wrongdoings? No, or at least they didn't say anything about it in the story. But does it matter that she came from this organization? She lived with this couple, with the Ranigans, while she was in law school at Notre Dame. And, you can't help but wonder, is she going to allow those unusual views or those aggressive or those abusive views to affect the way her performance as a justice? We do expect a certain amount of independence when we're looking for the Supreme Court justices. And so I think that's important. That's important to look at and to watch and to talk about. Certainly there's been lots of hints that maybe she was going to lean a certain way, or is she going to obey her husband like the Bible says she's supposed to, even though she was the one who was appointed to the Supreme Court. We'll have time will tell, right? But we need to make sure that we don't overstep our bounds. And I think the topics are important. I think the way that they were presented in this article in The Guardian did a disservice to the importance of the content, and I think it makes a kind of a dog and pony show, or is that did I get that right? Some kind of sideshow, right? Of, hey, look what's going on over in the U.S. and it just, I don't know, it ticked off the skeptic sense in me, and so yeah, go ahead, Richard. Sorry.
Yeah, me too. And the thing is that regarding the kind of looking back at the allegations, this religious organization, have actually put an independent study together to try and find out what has happened. Because this is another thing that set the kind of spidey sense off in me, because they do seem to want to get to the bottom of these allegations as well. The problem is that, and it's been done time and time again, they've got a legal firm, which Quinn, Emanuel, Hercart and Sullivan, to conduct an independent investigation into the article calls them decade-old claims of sexual abuse against minors. But this is a clincher. It says a written report of its findings would not be released to alleged victims or the public. And this is the problem with all of these groups, all these religious groups who have the spotlight shined on them. They should do it transparently. They'd have got so much more respect if they'd have put that forward and said, yes, we will investigate. We've got this. And this investigation has been concluded now, but we don't know the results of it. Why not be transparent? You're going to look a lot better in the public eye if you've got transparent, regardless of the outcome, if you've got transparency in those investigations. You know, say we're willing to investigate ourselves. I applaud them for that. That's a good thing to do. But make it public, make it transparent all the way out. And even the victims don't get to see the result of this investigation, and that's wrong.
Yeah,
and that, Kelley,
it made me wonder if they were really serious about investigating it, or if they just wanted to appear as if they were serious about investigating it.
Exactly. Yep.
Thank you, Kelley. You got my point. I was going to ask, am I too optimistic? Are you too optimistic? Because for me, they are just they are just washing their appearance. No, they are just doing control damage, and that's what they are doing. They are cleaning their image. That is what I wanted to say.
Yeah,
but
having an independent investigation, you can be independent in your research and your investigation, but sharing the results is part of being independent. If the people of praise hired the lawyers, which is fine, that doesn't mean it's going to be biased. They could hire, a legal firm can in fact be independent even when they are hired by one of the parties that's heavily invested in the results. But if the people of praise have control over who sees the results, that doesn't really pass the sniff test for me as far as being independent. It just fell a little short, I think.
What Richard said about gaining, I don't know, doing that depending on the results. For me, and once again, I might be a little biased against these codes, but when you do something like that, your own investigation, and the results are secret, for me, it's just like, yeah, we're guilty and we have to cover this. We have to make something to pretend we are doing something against the allegations. But for example, I want to quote one of the victims who she was sexually abused. And when she spoke about her case, she was told that even though some individuals had been interviewed about the allegations, they didn't recall the details. And it had been difficult to get information. So this is kind of weird, guys. All this information disappearing and the results are nowhere to be found. For me, that's quite weird. Once again, maybe I'm too pessimistic.
Yeah, regardless of what they've done or not done, this group seems to, if you have a look at its kind of teachings and what it expects of its followers, they seem to be kind of usual run-of-the-mill, stuck in the past kind of religious organization that's about as... I originally wrote in my notes that they were stuck in this Bronze Age, but I think being stuck in the 70s is actually being less liberal than being stuck in the Bronze Age, because there were some quite what would consider liberal attitudes during the Bronze Age. So yeah, I don't know. It makes for a good conservative country song, some of the rules and things they have done it.
Also, before I ask Kelley about his opinion, I think it was Scott who said that there was no information about the men. I do remember that only men can be governors and only men can preach and all of that, and women have to be extremely submissive. That was kind of like the part that got me. It was like, what the heck, as Richard said, what age are they living in? So, yeah, there was a little bit of information about that in there. Sorry, Kelley?
Yeah, there does seem to be a degree of that here too, as Scott mentioned, that some of the women were claiming that the Ranigans were taking their paycheck, they were overseeing who they could date, who they couldn't date, and if Amy Comey Barrett was living here, well, we know she was living there, and she was involved in any of this activity, it seems to me that she was the young woman that was there, right? And this might have been happening to her too as well. And then it occurred to me that, like, she might not even consider that abuse if that's what she was indoctrinated to believe, that the man had complete authority over the household and she was subservient to him. And if she does think that, I'm really not comfortable with her being on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I mean that's really
was my biggest takeaway from it.
Yeah, that's really, well, that you can see that's why they chose that for the headline, right? That was the big getcha. That was the big hook right there. And there's a justice on the Supreme Court that has that came from this misogynistic organization, and they at the very least they have established that they do have misogynistic ideals or conceptions that they put forward, and that they're proud of. They think that is what the big man, the big patriarch in the sky, handed down to us. And so that's really I think this was good to like kind of keep things on the radar. And I don't know, there might be some people that are swayed by the aggressiveness of the headline and of the implications that are made. It's like it's like the old Fox News strategy, right? You don't want to say that somebody did X. You say, did somebody do X? And then they let the viewer kind of take that where they will. And yeah. So anyway,
some people would say,
yeah.
that's Fox News strategy. Some people would say that.
Yeah, I think wearing skeptic hats and not witch hunter hats is the right way to go. And Scott said it perfectly at the beginning when he said, even if it's things that we agree with, and it's attitudes that or articles that seem to be along the usual lines of stuff that we're agreeing with, you've got to put your skeptic hat on and not just accept it just because it seems to be in your favor. Then that's exactly when you fall into the kind of Fox News way of thinking.
Wow,
yeah,
guys,
exactly. I agree.
I hadn't seen it from that point of view, and yeah, you're totally right. As I said, when I read it and I read the name of this judge, I'm immediately alarmed because, as Scott said, okay, this person comes from this specific background, so is this going to affect her job or her develop how she does things? And my biggest fear, and this is going to be related to the third topic, so I don't want to spoil much about that, but when this specific organization has to answer to justice, is she going to be there? Is she going to be moving, her contacts, or am I being just paranoid? Am I falling in the trap of this article that is trying to make me think about that? I don't know, but as Richard said, we have to always be skeptical, even in things that kind of agree with us, because I have a history of not believing much in the church, and most of the time believing the victims rather than the guy saying, no, we didn't hurt this person. But yeah, you're totally right, guys. We have to be skeptical even with things that we may agree at from the beginning.
I would say especially with things that we agree on. You're the easiest person to fool is yourself. And so so in that regard, I thought that this article did have some value in it as almost like a practice, a skeptic practice, and so there was tidbits of real information of concern in there, but the presentation, the way that it was presented to us, was a totally different story.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's shocking. And I think we need to remember that regardless of all of this, victims of child abuse should be the ones who are protected at all costs and in all cases. And this article and articles like this from both sides or all sides of the spectrum, I think they belittle that, and kind of trying to make a bigger thing out of somebody's connection to the religious group than concentrating on the victims themselves if this indeed did occur. And
right.
if it is found that is the case, that there was child abuse, then get the spotlight shined directly on this organization, and then maybe question Amy Coney Barrett's connection to them and whether she was present, and like dig deeper and get that spotlight shined on it. But until that's done, the victims are the most important people, and the people who feel that regardless of whether it's been found in a court of law, the people who feel they've been abused, this organization clearly abuses people, manipulates them, and kind of indoctrinates them, all the usual good stuff we get really with religious organizations. But let's listen to their voices and not kind of shift the focus onto something which really has nothing to do with the story.
Oh yeah, and especially on the descriptions of people. I don't want to go very graphic, so I would advise people be guys, don't be like me, be more skeptic, and please pay attention to the descriptions of the things that they were doing with the children, because those things are very creepy. And I want you to remember about that when we go with topic number 3. And now I would like to move on. But before we move to that, we have to really thank all these people, especially our veteran viewers and everyone who has subscribed to the nonprofits, for getting us to over 10,000 subscribers. Yeah, 10.6 thousand subscribers, guys. So if you're watching us now and you haven't subscribed yet, get on that. Once you have subscribed, please like and ring that bell so you can always know when a new Nonprofits episode premieres. It's every Sunday at 3 p.m. Central Time, but you already know that, right? Yeah, of course you did. You knew that already. And if you do that, please also share the link to our channel with your friends, family members, co-workers, that neighbor guy you don't really like, that neighbor guy that you really like, and the poor guy who is between those two other neighbors and you. So, because you never know when new friendships are going to start. They could arise from criticizing the harms of religions, totally. So basically, share this to anyone and everyone, guys. So people, let's get the word out there so we can start helping with those fundraisers. And finally, guys, are you aware that the atheist community of Austin has another YouTube channel? Shocking, I know. And you should be. Check out the Atheist Experience Network, a channel where you can find all ACA shows in podcast form. Subscribe at tiny.cc/AN podcast to listen to episodes of the Nonprofits, the Atheist Experience, Secular Sexuality, and all of our other ACA shows, so you don't miss a single episode, and especially from the flagship program, the Nonprofits, obviously. And now with that, Richard, I think you are going to shine in this next segment. Are you ready, sir?
Yeah, I think shine's never a word that
No
should be
pressure.
applied to
No
me.
pressure.
You always shine. Be the best, Richard. Be the best.
This article's from the 8th of June this year, and is by Shira Labartov, and it was published in Newsweek. And it's a relatively simple article on the surface. Essentially, an atheist kept a Bible in prison because it was the easiest way to keep records of names and addresses of those she had met inside. I think where the real story in this article is is in the censorship prison employ in banning books. The article states that in a 2019 report from non-profit PEN America determined that the restrictions in prison constituted the nation's largest book ban. In an unrelated article, an online article about the report from 25th September 2019 published in The Appeal, we're told that the Human Rights Defense Center, which publishes prison legal news, depicted a worsening situation to the Washington Post this month, describing an accelerating clampdown over the last 30 years. HRDC compiled partial or full banned books lists from at least 20 state prison systems this year. The organization found that 2 of the worst states were Texas, and they had over 10,000 books on its list, and Florida with a list of over 20,000 banned books. The article goes on to say books banned by prison departments routinely include those on the history of slavery or about mass criminalization and incarceration, such as Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow, or books about Black liberation movements. I think there's lots to chew on there. So, Scott, do you want to take it?
Sure. Yeah, it was an interesting. I had a chuckle when I was watching the, she had posted a TikTok video or some one of the online things that the kids are doing nowadays. So she was talking about how, the headline is atheist describes why she kept a Bible in prison all these years, or something along those lines. And you're like, oh, okay, wow, she's an atheist. She had a Bible in there. What's going on there or something? And she just needed a way to keep track of her information. They were not allowed to maintain like address books or notebooks or anything like that. They couldn't take any of that information if they got moved to a different location or to a different cell or things like that. And so they would use, and apparently they checked with, they did talk to other former inmates as well, and they found that that's not uncommon for inmates to use Bibles to write down information, because they know that those Bibles aren't going to be taken when they try to move. And so that there was a couple of things that brings to mind. First of all, the most important thing there is that their prisoners are being treated poorly. And, this is not news. This is something that we're all familiar with. And so, so to me, that's the main thing. Prisoners aren't allowed to keep books. Prisoners aren't allowed to keep address books. They're not allowed to stay in touch with people. That they can't take down, address and telephone information, or maybe one of their friends that's also an inmate wants them to pass on some information after they leave, and that kind of thing. And, that it just seems, I don't know, it's just inhuman. And it really boils down to the way that they treat the prisoners. And there's just we have a long tradition in the United States of not treating our prisoners very well. We're the most, the most prison aggressive nation in the world. And it's just, it can be very challenging. It can be very, well, what's the word I'm looking for? It can be very frustrating as somebody looking at it from the outside in, trying to, these are people, these are human beings in there. You need to treat them like human beings. And the bottom line here, though, and this is just a pet peeve of mine, and I could go on and on for this, on and on about this if given time. I know we're on a limited time here, but when it comes to balancing a human being's well-being versus someone else's profit, that's just immoral. And, that goes for prisons for profit. That goes for healthcare for profit. If somebody's making decision about your well-being based off of the bottom line, and, that just seems like that person is not being treated like a human. It's dehumanizing. And it's this dehumanization that goes on that allows the prison administrators, the shareholders, to make decisions like this. They're prisoners, right? They don't need to get a fair wage for their work. They're prisoners. They don't need the luxuries of air conditioning in those prisons in Arizona. They're prisoners. They don't need to see the sun ever. They're prisoners. They don't need to have books. What books are what good upstanding people do. And you know, that's not something that prison, you know, they almost spit the word prisoner out as they say it. And it's I don't know, it's really embarrassing to be part of a society that treats other people like this.
Well, you mentioned it. You said that they don't see them as people; they see them as profit. And yeah, let me criticize a little bit more of this toxic capitalism that reigns as strongly as it does in the USA. Um, in that country, which by the way, the USA is a country with the most amount of people in jails. And apparently that is related to the fact that jails are privately owned, and thus the owner receive more money while they have more inmates inside. And there are reports and rumors of certain judges sending way too many people, especially Hispanic and Afro-American people, sending them to jail for minor reasons, only because apparently their pockets get bigger whenever they send more people, because the owners of jails are getting more funding due to the amount of people that they have. And yeah, I mean, this atheist was probably one of those victims. She was in jail because she had some weed, I think, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm mistaken, please correct me.
I think it was heroin. I think it was a Tupperware thing full of heroin.
It was a Tupperware of heroin, quote unquote, which I found funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then it wasn't weed. It was way stronger. Okay. Yeah, and I forgot oh yeah, and what was her big deal? That she just found a loophole with her Bible, as you mentioned. That's it. So, Kelley, I think that you had something important to say about this as well.
I don't know if I have anything important to say. I thought it was funny that, and I've seen it as an internet meme that Americans will use anything as a unit of measurement except for metric units. And here it was again. I mean, how many Tupperwares are in an ounce? I have no idea, right?
That's a shitload full of truth right there, Kelley.
Yeah. So that was the one thing that jumped right out at me. But kudos to her for the ingenuity. And I don't know if she came upon this idea independently. I know it is something that happens that happens all the time. I actually did a little bit of research, and I found the story of a World War II veteran, PFC Bill Waits. He was captured by the Germans, and he had a Bible that his mother had given to him to bring to the war because she thought it would stop a bullet for him, right? Well, it never stopped a bullet, but he was able to use the margins inside the Bible to keep a diary while he was in the POW camp. So this is something that actually has a little bit of a history going back. People have been doing this. Little side note, I thought this was kind of funny. I read that POWs captured by the Japanese used the pages of the Bible for cigarette papers. And one of the chaplains who was incarcerated with them said that he didn't really care as long as they got the word of God in them by inhaling it. At least they were getting the word of God inside them. So I thought that was
holy smoke, right?
Yeah, holy smoke, right? Exactly. But I'm glad that these people have at least some way to get around this system that's keeping them from being able to keep these notes. I mean, these are notes for their lawyer, for notes for their court cases. And it seems to me that not allowing them to be able to take these notes with them when they get transferred from place to place it seems inhumane to me that you would not be allowed to build your case for your defense case, right? And I think that illustrates a really bad problem with our prison system, that we're not allowing these people to have these things. And I'm really happy, and as much as I hate religion, I'm really happy these people have a Bible that they can use to do this with, that they have some get around this horrible policy, right?
She Shawshanked it, right? She Shawshanked it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good
exactly.
Movie. I guess it's kind of scary that... Oh, just saying quickly, kind of scary that the religion has so much power that the only thing that is allowed in there is a religious tool, and creepy. Richard?
Yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say. I think something is fundamentally wrong when the only book you're allowed to transfer from prison to prison is a religious text.
Absolutely.
It made me wonder too if like all religious texts were treated that way. Does a Quran have the same rights to it that the Bible does? Does a Muslim prisoner get to carry his Quran from place to place?
I mean, the article did make out that was kind of the thing, but I wonder how they're going with things like the Buddhist Tipitaka, which is 11 times longer than the Bible and comes in about 40 volumes. Yeah, how do they get around that?
Put a lot of addresses in that.
Okay, guys, that is going to make good conversation for another episode. Sadly, the following part of it's going to be mine, and it's going to be a little bit heavy. So before we jump into this and we start talking about those topics that for some reason I always end up with, please, people, show us. Let's take a break in our conversation. And if you didn't watch the other ACA shows during the week, here is what you missed, guys.
That surviving on a single income in 2022 is next to impossible.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like there's just no way.
I mean, I think monogamy might be on the way out if inflation continues the way that it is.
Atheists probably get along most easily with pagans, I assume. Is that right?
Yeah, I probably the people that have the rocks. Those people. I wouldn't be friends with those people. The rock people.
Like people who are like
the
spiritualists.
spiritual rocks, yeah, and the tarot cards and stuff.
And you know what? Greg Locke's institution is not there. It is not part of the institutions with 501c3. So he's renouncing nothing. He's just lying. A pastor lying! Shocking!
Like we've established on this show. Reading, thinking, we're working on it. We're getting there. Okay.
We're getting there, Jamie.
We're getting
one
there.
lesson at a time.
We're
going to go over vowels today.
Yeah.
After this, it's going to be a big day for you, bud.
It says that you can give atheists a way to pursue truth. Do you think that's something you could talk about? Because I know Dave likes truth. I've had truth just once or twice at a fancy restaurant, so I'm hoping to find some again.
And guys, now we are back, and now we are on my territory where, for some reason, I always end up talking about these awful topics. Today, we're going to talk about how the megachurch leader of a megachurch, which is called La Luz, Iglesia de la Luz. La Luz del Mundo. That's it, La Luz del Mundo. We're going to talk about how their leader, Naasón Joaquín García, has been condemned to 16 years in prison for sexual abuse of young little girls. Please follow the text that we have in the news. This is from CBS in the article. And what is so awful and so terrible about this guy? As soon as Naasón Joaquín García was condemned, guys, I had to make an episode because this POS, he should be in jail for the rest of his life. But he's going to be only for 16 years because he has so much, obviously so much money. And apparently in California, there are certain laws that if you say, oh yeah, I'm guilty of this, you don't have to pay for all your crimes, only for a small part of them, which I find terrible. Well, as soon as he was condemned to 16 years in jail, the Iglesia de la Luz, they decided to release a statement saying that it was unfair that their leader got jail time. Those disgusting humans, to put them one way, released a letter defending this guy who raped children. And I want to repeat that. They are defending a guy who raped children. They said that they were not allowed to face the victims to question their motives, to talk about the abuse, because obviously if you have some children who were raped, you have to torture them to know their motives. And even worse, in this stupid letter, they are saying that that Naasón is going to keep being the leader from jail. He's going to keep earning as much money as 60 freaking churches around the world. Churches in 60 freaking countries can give you. And he's going to keep doing his leading work from jail, and they are going to keep supporting him. So this is awful. we have a situation where there is a guy who has been making child pornography where people are ignoring everything that he did. He raped children for years, and only 3 cases were admitted, and he pled guilty for those 3 cases to get 16 years instead of the life sentence that he should be getting for this. So is it California the problem? Is it the laws? Are there some pockets getting filled with money? Is there a special consideration to leaders of religious cults? What do you think, guys? Please take this from me.
All of the above. I think this is unlike our first article, which was, this one has been, it's clear, it's clear cut, it's down the line. And this is one where the abuse has been identified, it has been charged, he has pleaded guilty. The sickening thing about this case, for me, and indeed for the victims, is the article tells us outright that a plea bargain was made. And the victims didn't even know this until the very, very last minute. And I don't know how that. I don't know whether that's a California law thing, as Teo said. I don't know. I don't know whether it's throughout America, but it's the fact that only so many charges were brought against him because it decided to make a plea bargain, and the victims weren't even informed about this until the very, very last minute, and there was nothing they could do. I think that is the core of there's something wrong with the justice system that allows that to happen.
I totally with you on that.
The courts in the U.S. generally don't care what the victims think about the case. They usually let them do a victim impact statement at the end of the case and let them know and let the court know how it has affected them. But the court doesn't change any proceedings because of the feelings of the victims, which may or may not be wrong. I don't want to argue that point. I just wanted to explain it. But there's definitely too many people that were willing to defend this guy for the heinous act. I mean, he's a piece of human detritus, and I hate to insult detritus that way. The amount of people that came forward to defend him and to defend the Ranigans from our first story today just drove me insane. And it's always the same thing. Yes, but he's a man of God. Well, he might have made one mistake, but he's dedicated his life to God. You know what? I don't care who you dedicated your life to. If you're molesting kids, none of the rest of that stuff matters to me. Right? And that's the way I feel about it. I don't understand how anybody can defend these actions just because of your job, of your chosen profession, right? It doesn't make nobody would say, oh yeah, he molested these kids, but he's a really good chef, right?
Yeah, it's very, I mean, sadly, these types of stories are common enough that, you read, I mean, it just seems like, oh, okay, I've heard that before. I mean, I don't want to think that we're becoming accustomed to it or being, what do we call that? Habituated to this kind of thing, right? We don't. I look back to what Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It was one of my favorite shows as a kid, and he always said, "Look for the helpers. Look for the helpers. When there's a catastrophe, look for the people that are cleaning up the mess. Look for the people that are standing up for the people that were victimized. That kind of thing." And so that's what I would expect. If this was in any other context, somebody had been abusing children or taking advantage of vulnerable people. This is our second story tonight, just to make that point. This is the second story that kind of has those themes going to it. I mean, that's how common this thing is. But if we look at the people who should be the helpers, right? We look at these. I was able to find another article on a website called lawandcrime.com. And it's titled, Church Still Stands Behind Convicted Sexual Predator Leader Naasón Joaquín García. And you just think, how can that be? I mean, they haven't these people seen? He admitted to doing what he was accused. Here's a quote from that story. It says, in pronouncing his sentence, the judge criticized those that had turned their back on the victim, saying, shame, shame on you. But none of that seemed to deter his followers and church leaders who claimed the prosecution's evidence was, quote, doctored and altered. I mean, they're even making excuses for this guy as they reiterated their support for the man they call their apostle. A statement from church leaders following the sentence stated, our confidence in him remains intact, comparing his prosecution to a path that God has placed in front of him for a reason, as he did for the apostle Paul. Okay, so there we go. There we have that biblical justification of this is just trials and tribulations on our apostle here. Notice who's left out of that assessment there. Okay, Richard already mentioned this. We look at let's see what happened to the victims. Christopher Kellermeyer, whose wife was charged with being Garcia's accomplice and acting as a groomer, which adds a whole new level of disgustingness to it, said Garcia's followers would not be easily persuaded of his guilt. Quote, a lot of people have the expectation that once there was a guilty verdict, whether it be through trial, whether it be through pleading guilty, that loved ones and family members would wake up to the truth. And unfortunately, I see a lot of lamentations of family members, but still just purely drinking from that information trough only from the church. Okay, I think we have a very vivid analogy being made there. They're drinking the Kool-Aid from the trough, and they're accepting that narrative that he had no choice, that he's innocent, and this is all some kind of farce. And I don't know. I expect more from my fellow human beings. The cognitive dissonance is very strong with these people. We all suffer from cognitive dissonance. And of course, it's very easy to recognize it in other people as opposed to recognize it in yourself. But it's not that the religious leaders are more likely to commit these kinds of atrocities that makes it the most sickening. These people are, and I said this before, and though there are some people that say that positions of leadership do attract these types of personalities, these types of abusive and manipulative personalities, but this person, people are supposed to be safe with him. They're supposed to be offer the protection of faith, the armor of God should be there. It's also that these people offer themselves to their congregations as moral leaders, role models, people to be leaned on in times of need, and then advantage is taken. And it's just utterly sickening. And I can't think of any other word that more perfectly describes this. And it's sad that it just happens all too often. I want to see a congregation, and I imagine it's happened. I haven't seen one. No, I want to see the congregants stand up and say, no, you're out of here. You know, you go off to prison. You're not with us anymore. I want to see that. I want to see a true test of one's commitment to what's right and good, and not simply obedience, which seems to be the key here, which seems to be the case. Loyalty and obedience. That's what's valued, not what's right and good. And so when I hear things like, oh, you can't have objective morality without God, boom, there's my go-to story right there. Let's see, how do you explain that?
Yeah, the problem, this is not going to be a defense, by the way, but just like in the previous quotes that we were talking about at the beginning, the cult leaders they know how to manipulate people. For example, as soon as the news of this guy about Garcia, were out, the church forbid all the followers to watch the news, to watch TV, or to follow social networks pages. So they don't get real information. So they only get whatever their church is saying, and it's awful. It's so awful. Because I also want to talk about the victims, by the way. For example, this is terrible about the victims. There were 16 counts that include allegations of raping children and women, which were dropped in order to condemn this guy only for oral copulation, and that's it. And that's why he got that time. But all the raping allegations, producing child pornography, that was dropped, only to be able to condemn him for the other minor ones. And there is one comment from one of the victims that broke me. And it was, let me quote it. On the day Garcia was apprehended 3 years ago, Jane Doe 3, said her mother took her to church to join other worshippers who were crying and praying for him. I knew those tears were not for me. It broke me to stand there, she said as she wept. I couldn't help but feel betrayed. And guys, reading this really broke me. Imagine that somebody raped you and your mother is sad because your rapist is being accused of raping you. And she takes you over there where everybody else is sad because your rapist is going to be judged because he raped you and a bunch of other children. That must be the most awful, heartbreaking experience ever. And whenever I read this type of things, I lose more and more faith and hope in humanity. These type of things break me, guys. It's terrible.
Yeah, and this is not the first time that this organization. I think the organization was, if I remember rightly, was started by his grandmother, and then his father took over. And Garcia's father was also the subject of child sex abuse allegations in 1997, but no criminal charges were ever brought there.
Yeah, actually, it was his grandfather that started it.
Oh, his grandfather, sorry.
And his father, all of them got accusations. And with the case of his father, he actually was accused by a young man, who was kidnapped, and his body was found with 53 stabs on his body. So, silence in an awful way. And these guys are untouchable. They have the whole city under their power. And when I read the part in the beginning, I found some relation with this, because this church, they are churches. They cannot directly be part of government. But what do? Their followers become part of the government. So now the government is going to follow everything that this church says. And that's why I make the relation that, oh yeah, they are mentioning this person because probably they are afraid something like this could happen. And now this church has so much power because all the guys governing are going to be in favor of the church, and they can do whatever they want. There is an anecdote of this church performing at a special art place that can be used only for cultural things, and the president gave them permission because the president is one of the followers. That is how deep their power, their roots are with their power, and how is that they are so dangerous.
Yeah, this was I think this was tried in California, wasn't it? This case, and to be fair, the judge there seems to have been outside of that political control, because, and I take my hat off to, it was Judge Ronald Cohen who sat over this case, and his exact words were, "I never cease to be amazed at what people do in the name of religion, and how many lives are ruined in the guise of a supreme being." And he very much was not on the books of this, what is essentially a criminal organization by the sounds of things, a deep-rooted criminal organization. Some of the charges that were brought against them that were dropped included child trafficking and pornography. So it seems this, as Ateo was saying, this is a deep-rooted and it sounds like long-standing generational criminal organization. This is a step in the right direction for kind of, getting attention brought towards them, I think. And let's hope that in Mexico, they follow suit from what's happened in California.
Yeah, you mentioned criminal organization. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Scott. Go ahead, please.
Oh, I just a quick point here. You mentioned, Richard mentioned that they're like a criminal organization. One of the things that I found in that other article that I was reading is that a former member of the church has actually filed a civil RICO suit against Garcia and the organization. So they're being prosecuted as a criminal organization. So that's promising. We'll have to see how that turns out. It would be much better if there was a criminal prosecution under RICO and that kind of thing, but I guess you can take what you can get, right? Sorry, Kelley, go ahead with what you were going to say.
Oh no, you don't have to be sorry at all. I just thought that, with the allegations against Garcia's father, it made me wonder if he himself wasn't a victim at some point in his childhood. Not that that makes it any better or anything, but there seems to be a history here, and it may be that he grew up believing that this was the way to be, and which is really sad in and of itself, that he wasn't taught the proper way to do things. He was obviously shown the improper way by his own father, and that's kind of sad in and of itself. And it's something that we need to bring into account of the whole thing too. Like I say, I don't think it's an excuse for what he did, but and one of the things that really got me is that the position that he was in to be able to pick these victims and then use the threat of like eternal damnation against them if they didn't comply with them. That to me is horrific.
Oh,
unless you open yourself up to my sexual advances, you're going to burn in hell. That's just horrific to me.
Yeah, he was Jesus on earth, so they had to follow him. Okay, guys. I really want to move on. These type of things are so depressing, and now before we advance, I want to make a short announcement, because people, I know this looks sad, but not everything is bad news for you. Don't worry. For everybody watching, do you like my shirt? Because if you do, I have some very good news for you. You can also wear this shirt, but only if you buy this month, because this is one of the monthly special limited edition shirts. So go to the store at tiny.cc/merchaca, everything together, and so you can get your own shirt. Not only this one, by the way, you can also get other shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs, and you can check the new beanies, phone cases, and tote bags that they have in there. So yeah, please visit it. All ACA shows feature a special limited edition each month. This time I am wearing the one that you can get this month. So be sure to check out the store for non-profits merchandise and for all the other shows as well. They are not as important as this one, the flagship show, but you should still go and check them. Also, remember that you can become a member of the channel for as little as 99 cents a month. Click the join button below the video. This will give you access to special chat emojis, and if they ever implement slow mode, you will be immune to it. So yeah, guys, go and take advantage of that. It's going to be great. And yeah, as this was just a little bit depressing, I really need somebody to cheer me up. So please, Sir Scott, you are going to be the one who is going to change the whole topic, because also today is a special day. What can you tell us about that, Mr. Scott?
Well, before we dive into that, I want to know, can we get the Kelley coffee mug as well from the I want to get one of those. I want to get a Kelley coffee. But yeah, as Teo was saying, today, at least in the United States, or the day that this episode originally is airing on, I know some people will watch it after the fact, is Father's Day. And so it's a day that we celebrate our fathers or father figures or our family members, or everybody kind of takes their own take on what to do on Father's Day. I'm wearing my special Father's Day shirt to indicate my role and my relationship with my father there. So our article, then we thought we would do some family style, right? We'll have some nonprofits family style today. And so this is an article that I found in lifehacker.com, which is kind of hit or miss. They have some good things and they have some less good things. This is one of their better reviews here. It's from lifehacker.com, and it was written by Meredith Dietz, and it's from January of this year. And the title of the article is How to Come Out as an Atheist Without Destroying Your Relationships. And I hear this subject come up fairly often on some of the other ACA shows. Many times, being an atheist can be isolating. You can feel separated from, there can be a distance there with your family. And so many of us want to live our own truths, be our authentic selves, and so on. And so that's why, I think this one caught my eye. It can be very stressful to share something about yourself with your family members, thinking that they might be judgmental. Maybe they'll start viewing you differently. They might even want to change the relationship or cut off contact entirely. So it can be a very touchy issue, and so people are often wondering, how do we do that? You know, some of the most heartbreaking calls come from, especially from youth that have come out to their parents and have had issues. I've seen people in my own life, you know, friends of my kids, you know, that are coming out to their parents and then are just being rejected, you know, just being thrown off, and that can be there can be, of course, very traumatic for the person involved, but it can be very heartbreaking for those of us who want to be supportive to those kind of people. In this article, they summarized the book from atheist activist Greta Christina. I believe she's been on the Atheist Experience before and has actually spoken, was one of the speakers at the Bat Cruise one year. And she has a book called Coming Out Atheist: How to Do It, How to Help Each Other, and Why. And she's written several other books on atheist culture. And in the article, they took out some snippets, some of the best parts. And so I'm going to give you 8 points that were brought up in the article that were taken from Greta's book. And I want to encourage any of the panelists, if any of these tips kind of spark a little story in your mind, you know, just feel free to jump in, and then we'll go on that. So the first thing they said, by the way, before we even look at these 8 things, and I know hosts of the other ACA shows often say things like, make sure that you're safe. Your safety is of primary importance. Don't feel like you need to force yourself to come out if it's going to put you in danger. Okay, so we want to talk about this within the context of being safe. So first, we want to define what coming out means to you. What are you hoping to address by coming out to your family, by telling them that you don't believe in a God? Do you feel like you're being dishonest with yourself by not being open? You want to think about, how is this going to affect your relationship with your family members? How do you want things to be? How do you want things to change? How will it affect your day-to-day life? So number 1, define what coming out is going to mean, what you're hoping to accomplish. 2, focus on yourself. Okay, so if you're an atheist and your family might have a problem with that, presumably they are religious, and so this might not be the best time to start digging into their religion. Remember that you're speaking truth to who you are, and you're not necessarily trying to change anyone else's mind on their beliefs. You just want to maybe change the way that they perceive you. And so keep the focus on yourself. Use I statements. Number 3, in general, sooner is better. And the main reason for that is that you can plan it out. We also often hear, in fact, I think Matt Dillahunty talks about how he was outed by a family member who saw he was on the show. And so it kind of fell into his lap. And that happens fairly often, I think. People discover that you're an atheist and then kind of out you, right? And so if you do it sooner rather than later, that allows you to kind of approach it on your own terms. Obviously, of course, though, you don't want to rush it. You don't want to do anything before you're ready, but keep that in mind. It's easy to want to put off. And I know that, I had a moment with my family when I sat them down and my wife and I, told them that we didn't believe in a God. And it was nice to be able to do it on our own terms. And that leads us to the 4th point here. Plan things out, plan it out. Think about what you want to say. Bounce your ideas off friends, maybe even practice it in a mirror. Practice what you're going to say in the mirror. Select a location so that everybody can speak comfortably. It might feel safer to do it in a public place because maybe your family would be less likely to make a big stink about it, but it's really not fair to them. You want to allow them a chance to emotionally process what you're talking about and to speak freely. And so plan things out. Step 5, pay attention to the relationship first. Assuming, right, we're presuming here that you're trying to preserve the relationship. If that were not a goal that you had, then you could just say, fuck it. I don't think whatever you want. I'm going to go over here. And so if we're presuming that you're trying to maintain that relationship and maybe even improve it, keep the focus on that. Talk about what you want to change about the relationship. Things have been one way with us. I would like things to be a different way. Is that possible? Can we do that? Who you are is not changing. You're just asking that they have this part of you respected. Okay, that's an important thing to note too. I'm not changing. I'm not telling you that I'm turning into an atheist. I'm here to tell you that I am an atheist. I already am. So I'm not any different than I was yesterday. And so I just want you to respect that part of me. I want you to respect my right to make my own decisions and to have my own beliefs, just like I'll respect yours. Step 6, prepare for a confrontation. Duking it out is not necessarily your goal, but sometimes it turns out that way. So just be ready for that. Depending on what your goals are on your relationship with your family, confrontation can be beneficial or destructive. And I know we're running short on time. I just got 2 more points here. 7, be confident. This was from Christina's book here. When people you care about act as if you've wounded them by not believing in God and by telling them about it, it can be painful to deal with. If people get upset when you tell them you're an atheist, you can express compassion for their upsetness or for their issues with it, but you don't have to accept responsibility about that. It's not you didn't derive this situation just so that you could nail them. And the last thing, be the bigger person. Okay. Remember your goals. Okay. You want to change your life. You want to change your relationship. You want to change the way that you're perceived. If it gets nasty, just, there can be benefit of just letting things roll off your back. That's not to say you need to put up with abuse, but don't throw the gloves off too soon. And then I'll just have one last bit from the article, and then I'll pass it off to Richard next here. Finally, and this is from the article. Finally, if you're coming out as an atheist and anticipate a bad reaction, be sure to establish a supportive community first. Friends, selected family members, online, and so on. If your coming out doesn't go as planned, take stock in the fact that you made an important decision to be true to yourself. That counts for a lot. All right. You've heard enough from me. Richard, what do you got to say about this?
Yeah, I'm a lifelong atheist, so I've not had any experience personally of coming out of religion. In fact, I would say that of the close people around me, I've had more experience of people going into religion than coming out of it. But I have lots of these conversations, and I've had lots of these conversations for many, many years with people who have come out of religion. And, they were all really, really great points. I think first and foremost in any of these situations, the 2 of those points really stood out, and that is make sure you're safe and you're going to be safe. Don't come out to those around you if it's going to put you in any danger at all. And secondly, do it for you and be yourself and own yourself. It is for you. You don't have to kind of, and this may seem counterintuitive considering what I've just said, but you don't have to live a lie. But there's a difference. And I think this is important because the subtleties are sometimes missed. There's a difference between living a lie and not saying something to keep yourself safe. You can still be true to yourself without letting those know around you that you are something that may put you in danger. And I think that's a small thing. It seems a small thing, but I think it's very important to know that you can still be true to yourself. And very importantly, there are communities out there. The ACA is a fantastic one. We've got a Discord, and we've got the Facebook fan run groups, and you can go there and you can find community. If you don't want your friends and relations on Facebook to find out, there's a private fan run group where you can make posts in there, and people won't see those posts if you don't want them to. You know, there are communities out there, and you don't have to do this alone. There are other people there from many different perspectives. If you want to talk about, you know, to other ex-theists about the best way to come out if you're not quite there, you know, there's people who are there who you can do that with. If you'd like to talk to someone who's a lifelong atheist like me, then there's people there. There's a whole range of people, but make sure you are safe. And that is, you know, I cannot emphasize that enough. Kelley, what you got for us?
A couple of things. I'm in the same boat as you. I never really had a problem coming out. I was afraid that something like what Scott had mentioned would happen to me, that my mother would see me doing something like this. So about a year ago, I sat down with her. I told her what was happening, and surprisingly, she told me that she had become an atheist too over the ensuing years. So, yeah, it really threw me back. It was really actually pretty cool. But I want to make sure everybody knows there's nothing that says you have to come out as an atheist. I was an atheist for 35 years and never talked about it with anybody. And I never felt like I was being, I never felt like I was lying to anybody. I never felt like I was being untruthful. But to me, it just didn't seem like it was that important. So I never really discussed it with anybody, and nobody really knew it. I finally did come out during a club meeting, a rock club meeting of all things, a rock and jump club meeting, only because there was an evangelical there who was really bad talking atheists and making him out to be the devil. And I wanted to show him that we're not the devil. And it was somebody that I had already known very well. And yeah, right. There you go. And so I think it went a long way for him to realize that here was I, this person who definitely was not the devil, and I was an atheist too. It really went a long way to showing people that atheists can be normal people. So yeah, I just want to make sure that people know there's nothing that says you have to come out. If you are, though, this article was great. It had a lot of really good advice in it, you know, so much so that I'm going to use it as part of my research for an episode of Speak Your Truth in the future. So
cool.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's nice. Okay, I was going to say that Scott wasn't making a great job at cheering me up, because for me it's still very depressing that we live in a society where being an atheist is seen as something negative, something bad, and it's such a touchy subject that we have to use tricks, and we need these type of things in order to be able to tell our parents, please don't hate me, but I don't believe the same things that you believe. If you have different political views than your parents, you will totally understand the situation. But guys, you have been showing me, and everybody actually showing everybody and talking about the positive things about this. And it is amazing that nowadays we have something that years ago we didn't have. Personal story, I'm the only atheist that I know, and if I try to talk about religion with other people, they could get angry and upset. So finding a community, it was something amazing. That's why I started recently a community in Spanish as well, because I don't know, or I haven't seen. Well, now that I'm here, I have met a lot of different communities, but before I never saw any. And knowing that now we do have communities, now you can say, hey, I don't believe. And here on the internet, there are thousands of people able to listen to us, talk to us, hear what we have to say, answer our questions, or even people who are just doubting their religion, so they can ask, hey, so you don't believe? Why don't you believe? What do you think about this? And then we have answers to that. I think those are awesome things, and you really gave a very positive way of talking, Richard, especially you, about the community that we have and how we can interact with others. So
those are honestly the best conversations, the ones with people, because the majority of conversations you have with theists in these communities tends to be a bit snarky from both sides, but those are the best conversations and the best calls to our shows as well, where someone is genuinely interested, where someone's maybe not come across atheism before, they've grown up in a community where it's not even been a thing on the radar, and they've been browsing the internet and they've come across this thing called atheism, and it's got the kind of ball rolling in the mind, and they just want to learn more about it, and they start having these conversations with just a genuine interest to want to learn, and it's from those little seeds that mighty forests grow. And I think that you can see that in many different atheist communities. You can see them popping up, even in Britain, where it's like everybody's kind of atheist by default, even the religious people. So it's kind of like nobody talks about religion here unless you have to be a real like kind of door knocker to talk about religion in Britain, because nobody cares. You go to work. I work with a lot of Muslims. I work with a lot of Christians, and nobody talks about it. Nobody tries to sell you on it because nobody cares about it here. But even here, there are atheist communities, that you can join if you want to, if you're passionate about it, and it's fantastic just to see these little. Throughout the world, a little group in Australia, a little group in Britain, groups in America, and they all come together on the internet, and that's where we learn, and that's where these people who are wanting to come out of the closet and let everybody know that that the families know they are atheists. It's those communities that give them the presence and the confidence to do that if they want to do that, and I think it's a fantastic thing.
I think we would be remiss too if we didn't mention that there's a lot of people who call into Talk Heathen and Atheist Experience that talk about this. What kind of advice can you give me when I come out? And there is a lot of great advice there. If you go back and look at some of the archive shows, some of the old shows on YouTube, and there's a lot of really good advice that you could pick up there. So if you are coming out to your parents, I would suggest that not only read this article, but also look back at some of these old shows and pick up some of the advice off of them too.
Definitely. It's really interesting as an atheist to hear other atheists' stories. I mean, it's like Teo was saying, it's easy to feel isolated. He said he didn't feel like he knew any other atheists. And so, you can hear that other people are experiencing things and are going through some of the same things that you're feeling, even exactly while you're feeling alone and isolated. You can see, oh, there's somebody else over there who's feeling isolated and alone in exactly the same way I am. Hey, wait a minute, we're kind of in the same boat. And so coming out, whether for some, there's going to be a huge spectrum of different approaches and different results, and everybody has their own way. And so the more we know about how other people interact with it and deal with that, we can bounce our ideas off each other. And so the idea though here is that we can take steps to improve our lives. It's not like we're just kind of stuck in this cubby hole of being an atheist. And then, well, I guess, people are just going to hate us or whatever, however you feel. Maybe I'm the only one in my town who's an atheist or whatever. How many times have we had callers call in and say, oh, I'm the only one in such and such a town that's an atheist. And then the host says, oh, have you tried these 3 atheist organizations that are just down the street from you? I mean, you feel like you're alone, but we're all alone together. I guess I'm trying to say. That sounds kind of weird, but I kind of feel that way. I was fortunate enough to have my wife with me when we decided to talk to my parents. We actually had this similar conversation with her parents, but it was when we had kids, and we were looking ahead, and we thought, oh, there might be some issues with churches and stuff, and what are we going to do with the kids and that kind of thing. And so we wanted to make sure that we were clear. We wanted to make sure that the relationship between our children and their grandparents would develop in such a way that we're comfortable with. And so that's what really motivated us. And it wasn't the easiest conversation in the world I've had with my parents, but it wasn't the hardest conversation either. It actually, it turned out pretty good. I mean, I felt like our relationship was able to develop, up until that point. I think there was a lot of don't ask, don't tell going on, kind of a thing. You know, they kind of knew that we didn't really believe in God, but I think that they were still able to convince themselves, well, maybe not. They never actually said it, so maybe that's just my impression. But then once we said it, we're like, okay, that's out. But and to my surprise, both of my family and my wife's family, all of whom are religious and also fairly conservative in their religious views, were actually fairly receptive. I mean, there's resistance there. They think what we're doing is wrong, but they're respectful of our right and ability to make that choice for ourselves and for our children. And so I was hesitant. I wasn't really sure. We were fortunate enough not to be in any kind of situation where we could be harmed or where we would lose our livelihood or the roof above our heads or anything like that. But it was a positive experience. And you know, I got to think that there's got to be somebody out there that's in my exact same situation. There's got to be somebody that's in Richard's exact same situation, and Kelley's and Teo's, and, you know, they're just hearing people talk about living a person's life can be very reassuring. It can be very validating. And it can encourage you to make these positive choices. And Teo, I don't know if I was able to cheer you up enough after that last article, but just keep, you know, that's what I would say is, you know, by sharing your story, not only are you kind of putting yourself out there, but you're also making it a little bit easier for the next person. You know, a little bit, you know, they'll feel a little bit less lonesome. Teo, when you said nobody you knew was an atheist, well, now everybody that you know knows at least one atheist, right? So we're improving things with, you know, these slight improvements over time. I mean, boy, is this an evolution argument? I think we're heading down that way. We're evolving the society into a positive. So I've said enough, and so I'll let you kind of wrap things up.
We are out of time, so thank you so much, guys. With this, we are done. I have some final announcements. Please, everybody, join our fun social media outlets. You can find most of the nonprofit hosts at the atheist community of Discord by going to tiny.cc/AC-Discord and on Facebook, the groups that Richard mentioned at tiny.cc/FBNP. And if you would like to support the show, you can do so by becoming a patron at tiny.cc/patreon-NP. And if you find yourself already shopping at Amazon, support the atheist community of Austin by shopping at smile.amazon.com and selecting the atheist community of Austin as the beneficiary. Be sure to use that link to help out the ACA. We really, really appreciate it. Also, we really value your feedback. Tell us if you like what you see and what you don't like. You can use the comments down here or use the email at nonprofit@atheist-community.org. Do you like having a cartoon conducting? Do you agree with what we said today? Please let us know. And finally, guys, visit the Atheist Community of Austin official website, atheistcommunity.org, on the latest of what is happening. And feel free to contact the ACA at tv@atheist-community.org. So, guys, 1 minute. Final words, Kelley.
Awesome to be here. I always enjoy this, and I want to encourage everybody to come over and check out the Fan Run Discord and talk to me.
Cool. Richard, Scott, thank you so much. That's all the time that we have, and we are leaving now. Thank you, everybody, and hasta luego.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.